The year is 1945. Germany, defeated and broken, lay in ruins. The physical rebuilding was just the start. Deeper scars, those of guilt and shame, marked the nation's soul. From these ashes, a new Germany arose, but the ghosts of the Nazi past lingered. For a generation born after the war, the burden of history felt heavy. They saw a society unwilling to confront its past, complicit in silence. Out of this frustration, a radical movement began to take shape. It questioned the very foundations of the post-war order, seeing in it the seeds of future fascism. Students in Germany, inspired by revolutionary movements worldwide, took to the streets. This marked the birth of the Red Army faction, a group that would plunge Germany into an era of terror. The Red Army faction, or RAF, emerged from the radical student movement of the late 1960s. This was a time of upheaval, not just in Germany, but across the Western world. The Vietnam War, social inequalities, and the perceived authoritarianism of the state fueled widespread discontent. In Germany, this discontent was further fueled by the legacy of the Nazi past. Many young Germans felt that their parents' generation had not been held accountable for the crimes of the Nazi regime. The RAF's ideology was a mix of Marxism, Leninism, anti-imperialism, and a radical critique of capitalism. They believed that violence was justified in the fight against what they saw as a fascist state. The RAF's first act of violence occurred in 1968 with the firebombing of 2 department stores in Frankfurt. This attack marked a turning point, signaling the group's willingness to use violence and their transition from protest to terrorism. At the heart of the RAF were Andreas Baader, Ulrike Meinhof, and Gudrun Ensslin. These 3 figures became the public face of the group, their names synonymous with terror and defiance. Andreas Baader, charismatic and volatile, was the group's action man. He had a criminal past and saw violence as a legitimate tool for political change. His daring prison escape in 1970, aided by Ulrike Meinhof, cemented his status within the RAF. Ulrike Meinhof, a journalist turned revolutionary, provided the RAF with intellectual weight. She penned fiery manifestos and justifications for the group's actions. Gudrun Ensslin, a brilliant student from a conservative background, brought organizational skills and ideological fervor to the RAF. These 3 figures, along with others who joined their ranks, formed the core of the first-generation RAF. The early 1970s witnessed the RAF at its most violent. The group unleashed a wave of terror across Germany, targeting symbols of the state, industry, and the US military presence. Bombings became a terrifyingly regular occurrence, striking courthouses, police stations, and newspaper offices. One of the most audacious attacks was the bombing of the US Army headquarters in Heidelberg in 1972. The explosion killed 3 soldiers and injured 5 others, sending shockwaves through Germany and the United States. Beyond bombings, the RAF also resorted to kidnappings and assassinations. They targeted prominent figures in German society, aiming to destabilize the state and spread fear. The kidnapping and subsequent murder of Hanns Martin Schleyer, a leading industrialist in 1977, marked a new low in the RAF's brutality. The German government, initially caught off guard by the RAF's violence, responded with police crackdowns and legislative measures. Special units were formed within the police and intelligence services to hunt down the RAF. The government pushed through anti-terrorism laws, increasing surveillance powers and restricting civil liberties. These measures sparked a debate about the balance between security and freedom. The RAF's campaign culminated in the German autumn of 1977. This period saw the kidnapping of Hanns Martin Schleyer and the Lufthansa plane hijacking. The government's response ended the crisis, but polarized public opinion. The state's response raised questions about the erosion of civil liberties. The RAF's campaign of violence ultimately failed to achieve its political goals. The West German state, though shaken, remained intact. The group's actions left a deep scar on German society, shaping debates about terrorism and state power. The RAF's violence forced Germany to confront uncomfortable truths about itself. It exposed the persistence of extremist ideologies and the challenges of dealing with the Nazi past. The group's actions also had a lasting impact on German culture. Even though the RAF disbanded in 1998, its legacy continues to resonate in modern Germany.